Hey guys, so it has been requested that I put up my speed paint for the fan art that I did for YouTuber Zoe Marriner, whose links I will put in the description, and I've decided to finally tell the story of how a spider broke my hips to the big wide web. Completely pun intended. So buckle in, because it's a little bit of a wild ride. So, our story time for this video starts on May 23rd, 2016. By this point, I'm a junior in high school, and I'm doing my schooling from home for a couple reasons I won't get into here. I only had one class left to finish for that year, geometry. Now, I hated geometry, but to be precise, I hated having to find line lengths based on given angles and one given length. It's my kryptonite, like most of geometry. So I struggled through the study guide and had it all finally down except for two questions that were based on math I'd simply never understood. So my father comes up with this brilliant idea. He contacts a friend of his who is a structural engineer and leaves a message hoping that when he gets the text, he'll be able to explain it in such a way that maybe my dad can walk me through it. But we have some time to kill while Ahmed is at mosque with his family, so we decided that I was going to take advantage of the summer sun, the pool in our backyard we had yet to use, and capitalize on the time I had with my grandmother, who was visiting for my 16th birthday and my brother's 18th birthday. For reference, my birthday was on the 15th of May and my brother's is on the 30th of the same month. Since moving in, we hadn't had weather warm enough that we could use our new pool, so we were all dying to get in. And we wanted to train our new puppy and get her used to the water, and it was going to be perfect. I'd swim around for a few hours, and by the time we came back, all would be well, my questions would be answered, and I could ace this final and be done with schooling for this year. So, my mother, grandmother, and I all climb into the pool. My grandmother was standing on the first step with the water barely up to her ankles. No, actually, I think she was sitting down on the rim of the pool. Yes, she was sitting down on the rim with her feet in the water. My mother and I were standing on the second step down, so the second to last step before hitting the bottom of the pool. I was up to my waist in water, and my mom was only slightly less so. My father had been occupying himself cleaning the top of the pool, all by himself, because my brother and my foster brother were both at a party across town. The story gets interesting when suddenly I turn to my left and realize there's a spider hooked to the edge of the brick trim around the pool and lingering on the wall, just absolutely glaring at me. Now, I am very afraid of spiders, but I am not exaggerating at all when I tell you that the spider was genuinely 3.5 inches long, legs, body, and all. My grandmother immediately leaps out of the pool and runs, deciding that she does not want a spider all up in her life. And I would have totally followed suit were it not for my wheelchair. The story of why I'm in a wheelchair is also up on my channel. I'll try and link that in the description. I might forget. Anyway, my mom ended up staying with me for moral support, so we were just kind of waiting for my dad to come along with the net and scoop up this spider, right? So I start to move more to my right to, just give the spider all of the room that he needs to do what he needs to do. And all of a sudden I realize there's a second spider on my right, all pressed up against the wall, and it is only about 1 inch smaller all the way around, and I'm looking at this spider like, so you're like his cousin? Good to know. I'm just gonna go now. And I was so freaked out because it was like I was trapped between two spiders, massive arachnophobe. I was freaked out. So my father is calming me down, and my mom is like, don't worry, it'll be fine, it's just a spider. So my dad comes over, and he has the net, and he goes to scoop up the larger spider first, and he swings it around, and he intends to release it some distance from the pool. I don't know if he planned to, toss it over the wall, into the wash behind our house, or what. But he had planned to just kind of get rid of it peacefully. No need to kill it. And the spider had other plans. So the spider realizes as it's moving through the air, hang on, I'm in a net. and it decides it does not want to be in the net. So it leaps into the air and rushes back to the safety of the water. So I've been told since this incident that it runs over the surface of the water and like straight up like water walks over onto my chest, where it just like clamps on and stays for dear life holding onto my chest. Well, it all happened so quickly and so like I was trying really hard not to look at the spider, so it all happened so fast that by the time the spider was on my chest, I had no idea it was even out of the net. So everyone's looking around in confusion, like, what just happened? And then my mom spots the spider. So my mom spots the spider, and her initial plan is just that she is going to wring her hand back and she's going to push it off my chest. And she's not even going to tell me, she's just going to do it so I don't panic. And my dad does not realize that this is what she's doing, and he says to me, "Oh, it's on your chest." So, a little late for me not to panic. Now, as I'm panicking, I realize a couple of things. There is a spider on my chest. A massive, almost 4-inch spider is on my chest. And it's like this moment like slowed down in my brain, okay? So my mind was racing so quickly that I had to like slow everything down to even get my thoughts to normal speed. So I'm thinking to myself, I need to get this spider off of my chest. And I can't just grab it. I can't just reach up and grab it off my chest because A, I'm not really sure where on my chest it is. I just know that it's there. And B, if I just grab it, then it's gonna be in my hand, and how is that really any better? Though in hindsight, yes, on my hand is definitely better than on my chest. So I'm thinking of all of these ways that this can end without me getting potentially bit by a venomous spider, even though the spider was, like, so not venomous. So I'm thinking, and it occurs to me, I'm like, what if I just fall backwards into the water? And I think to myself, yeah, I'll just push into the water, the spider will push up off my chest, and it will all be groovy. So that's what I decide I'm gonna do. But the problem was not the plan, it was the execution. First mistake was that I started to move towards going underwater, and when I did that, I started taking a deep breath, but I did so too late, so that I was already underwater when I was sucking in air, or in this case, water. So I just had lungs full of water, and my nose is all full of water, and I'm like basically drowning, choking, trying to figure out what is air and what is water. So the second and much worse mistake that I made was that I was so scared of this spider on my chest that I just pushed too hard. I pushed my body too far. And as I'm pushing underwater, I put so much force behind my downward thrust, if you will, that my hips ricochet off my pelvis, and both of them just break. And the left one, I dare say, even shattered, because the left hip head completely sheared off the rest of the bone, like free-floating in my body, held in place by muscle and tissue around it. And I am in agony. I come out of the water screaming, and I'm trying to pedal, but I've just broken my hips, so I can't pedal. I can't hold myself above the surface. So I go back under, and I'm taking in more water, and I'm coughing, and I'm trying and struggling to get to the surface, and finally, my mother grabs me after what was most likely been like 20 seconds, if even that, but for me, it felt like a lifetime. And she grabs me, and she's holding me, and she's yelling. I don't even remember what it was that she was yelling. I just know she was yelling at my dad to do something, and then yelling at my grandmother, who, my poor grandmother was like in shock. She had never even seen me fracture before, so to see the worst fracture I'd ever had, oh my gosh, she was just completely stunned. And my mom's yelling at her, "Get the wheelchair! Get the wheelchair!" So she does. And she starts bringing the wheelchair over, and I ask my mom, "Is the spider gone?" Because those are my priorities, folks. Not, oh, hey, by the way, I think I've just broken both my hips. It was, no, is the spider gone? So yes, I'm told the spider is gone. My dad apparently smashed the spider to bits while I was flailing around at the surface, but I don't really, I mean, I remember seeing it, but it's all so blurry. So my parents somehow managed to get me out of the water with 2 broken hips, and for that I have to commend them, because I have no idea how they did it. I don't remember. I remember that it hurt really, really bad. Literally, when I try and think about those memories, it's just kind of this red tinted fog where I vaguely remember in like 3rd person certain things that happened. But I don't have like actual memories. The next thing I really clearly remember is that I was laying on an air mattress in my living room. The one we'd pulled out that my dad had been sleeping on since my grandmother showed up. And I'm laying on this air mattress. And my poor mother, she's like, I'm gonna just call 911. I'm gonna call for an ambulance, and that's that, and you're going to the hospital, because obviously something is wrong. And at this point I've told her it's not my knees, it's not any of the usual culprits, it's not my back, it's my hips. So my mom is like, I'm gonna call 911, and I'm telling her, no, I don't want you to call 911. Well, of course, I'm screaming in agony with 2 very likely broken bones, like, she's not going to listen to me when I tell her not to call an ambulance, and of course she doesn't. So my mom's changing into, you know, her plain clothes out of her wet swim clothes, and my dad's pulling on a shirt, my grandmother is standing there in shock and keeping the dogs at bay. And my mom calls for an ambulance, and the ambulance shows up, and I remember the ambulance driver is like, we're gonna give you an emergency IV, and we're gonna give you some morphine. And I literally looked at him and I said, no, you're not. He did anyway, because I was clearly in no position to tell him what he was going to do. And he gives me the IV, he gives me the morphine, and the instant it went through my system, it was like, oh. I actually said to the guy, oh, so maybe this wasn't such a bad idea. And I remember him laughing, like, yeah, no duh, kid. So I'm loaded into the ambulance. All my neighbors are freaking out. I actually think that my next door neighbor's kids were outside. I'm so sorry if that's the case. Because then they heard me screaming a lot. But I am ushered down to the hospital. My dad hacked the peds unit TV so that we could watch like true crime shows or whatever it was, and they had to cut me out of my swimsuit. But they had to leave my swimsuit bottoms on because they couldn't move them out of fear that they would worsen the fractures in my hips. So I was laying there in wet swim trunk bottoms and covered up by blankets, and that was my life. So a little while passes, I'm taken down to x-ray, and I won't go into all that happened at that particular x-ray because that is a story time in and of itself. But I get the x-rays done, I come back, and I'm told yes, they are very, very badly broken, to the point that they need my first ever surgery. And I'm terrified. I'm very high, but I'm very terrified, and I'm really kind of banking on the fact that I'll be incoherent and unconscious, and that's the only thing that's keeping me sane at that point. And the doctor, the surgeon on call, pulls my mom and my dad into the hallway. Now this is where it gets a little bit serious. I didn't find out until about 3 weeks later, but that was when my surgeon told my parents that the surgery that he needed to do had about a 50% chance that they would nick one of my arteries in the way of my injury and that I would bleed out and die. And that was a 50% chance. So there was a 50% chance that I would have died on that table. In other words, real scary news. So my parents are terrified, I'm terrified, everyone's terrified, and they sign off. I went to surgery. I had 6 titanium pins put in and a sort of bone cement to help my bones heal in the right position, and to reattach my sheared hip head. And it all healed fine. I didn't die on the table. There was no cutting of my arteries. I did lose more blood than anticipated, and they ended up needing to give me more, but all was well, and I survived, and I can sit cross-legged again, which they thought I would never be able to do, and there are so many stories that have sprouted from this one event in my life, but I am so glad that it happened because it really changed my life. A near-death experience usually does. So that surgeon, he was incredible, and I would name-call him, I would name-check him, but I haven't asked him if it's okay if I name-check him. But he undoubtedly saved my life that day. So, you know, who knew a spider could do so much damage and cause so much accidental, inadvertent good in my life as a result? But that's all from me today, so have a great morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time, and I will talk to you guys next time.